LEGO agents are on a mission in the undercover mobile command center.
Enemy approaching!
Now you can transform the mobile command center into attack mode. Crime boss Brick Daddy is on the loose. Now you can build a space police central. Send out the prisoner transporter. Set the bait and wait for Brick Daddy.
There he is in his lunar limo!
Now it's up to a team of brave Powerminers to save the world. You can join them and use the claw digger to reveal the energy crystals. Next, build the thunder drop with his new rotating door to smash through the rock.
Recently, I was building the Galaxy Explorer remake, and I think this set has a special place in my heart. I'm not connected to it in the way that LEGO intended, as it was created for the purpose of harkening back to the 70s era of LEGO and the kids who are now adults from that era. But really, the reason why this set is so important to me is that it reminded me of my nostalgic era of LEGO. This set is jam-packed with a considerable amount of play features, and while building it, I was concocting a storyline for these minifigures, thinking of ways to incorporate it into a scene, and then all of a sudden, it hit me. I realized why I enjoyed this set so much. It had all of the key principles to making a phenomenal and original theme. It reminded me of the amount of themes that coexisted while I was a kid. It was a taste of Space Police, Powerminers, Agents, and Atlantis. Sets which I have neglected in large scapes of plastic containers. I have since unsealed them and began the process of restoring them, although all of these events were the stepping stones to what led to this video. I hope by the end of the video though, that I've brought these amazing themes back into the spotlight, or at least getting people to talk about my favorite era of LEGO again. 2008 brought us LEGO Agents, a mix of James Bond-esque storytelling clashing with other spy-inspired concepts, where an organization of operatives fought against archetypal villains. The color palette was simple enough. The bright orange guys are bad, and the navy blue agents were all heroes. This was a time where LEGO still cared about being able to tell a story, naming characters, and giving context to their origins, while providing just enough source material, but not too much that it could still let your imagination run wild. I mean, just look at some of them. Dollar Bill, Slime Face, Dr. Inferno, Dr. Disaster, Claudette, and the list goes on. I've never seen such a varied amount of characters, and they're just the villains. As for the heroes, I think their strong suits were the vehicles. I mean, the headquarters truck was probably the highlight of the entire theme. Tons and tons of play features, from the mini ATV that launches out from the bottom of the truck, to the side hatch that reveals the entire command station. And my personal favorite, the projector that displays the different images onto the walls. This was just the initial wave though. In 2009, LEGO rebranded Agents to Agents 2.0. Why they added the extra addendum to the name is beyond me. But what I do know is that the sequel was just as strong as the first wave. We witnessed the release of Dr. Inferno's mech, the River Heist, and a massive aerial defense unit helicopter. What I remember being the greatest selling point for this theme was the fact that it didn't look out of place in a regular LEGO city. In fact, with the release of Robot Chronicles Flash game in 2009, the game promoted mixing these sets with the then named Racers theme, suggesting that the villains have stolen some of these high-end cars. I don't think we've seen a theme clash since the release of Agents. As much as the theme was quite successful, sadly, LEGO ended up retiring it during the tail end of 2009. Another similar theme would take its place a couple years later in 2014, Ultra Agents. It was a valiant attempt at recapturing the magic of LEGO Agents, but I think the designers over at LEGO made a big mistake by making all the villains' vehicles blend in with the heroes. Its predecessor clearly distinguishes villains, with a bright orange color and the heroes perfectly contrasting with a somber navy blue. Ultra Agents just didn't have a style consistency that was good enough to keep people interested, although I can still say it's vastly better than the recent waves of LEGO sets that are being pushed out today. But this isn't about the shortcomings of Ultra Agents, so let's move on. Powerminers is hands down my absolute favorite LEGO original theme. The most iconic sets I can think of are the Thunder Driller, Titanium Command Rig, and the Claw Digger. Powerminers was defined by its grungy lime greens, industrial orange, and brave blue aesthetic. The theme was centered around cave explorers who were trying to find crystals in deep caverns. Somewhere along the way, they encountered rock monsters of varying sizes. While they were pretty unprepared for such a threat, they made use of their drilling equipment, pickaxes, and dynamite to secure crystals and eliminate the rock monsters. The rock monsters' designs were quite likable too. The designers created unique molds for the monsters, and they all existed in transparent color schemes. They could eat or store crystals inside their mouths, which was actually a really nice play feature. If LEGO rebooted the theme under a different name and utilized the new glitter colors, I think it could be a success. One of my favorite things about Powerminers was that it encouraged alternative builds and combining structures together to make absolutely massive vehicles. Because the universe was established vaguely, any vehicle was realistic to the universe because it complemented the scrapyard aesthetic. I mean, even the LEGO designers themselves came up with dozens of combo builds that came with the instructions, so there was even more of an incentive to buy multiples of these sets. I think Powerminers was the embodiment of what LEGO is all about: creativity. No matter how crazy the builds were, they always seemed plausible to exist in the Powerminers universe. The third and final wave of Powerminers released in 2010, the color palette was adjusted slightly for a more aggressive metallic accent. This was reflected in the minifigure's clothing style changing from blue jumpsuits to fully pearl silver. While the monsters were formerly a neutral gray, they were overhauled to a more aggressive and fiery charcoal. Some parts of the mechs and vehicles also followed this color change as well. Although, in my opinion, I think the silver color was just out of place compared to the previous two waves, and that's probably one of the contributing factors as to why the numbers didn't look too well on LEGO's end. It's all about style consistency. Powerminers was of course a nod to Rock Raiders, a theme which was released roughly a decade before. Rock Raiders took advantage of its unlikely color scheme, turquoise, neon green, and brown, to preserve that very same junkyard aesthetic we saw in its more vibrant rendition 10 years later. Even with how great Powerminers was, the theme was shelved completely in late 2010 after the third wave failed to meet LEGO's standards. Atlantis was just one of those themes that seemed to be a staple of LEGO's creativity. These sets beckoned back to the likes of Aquazone, portraying a time in the not-so-distant future where scientists of Atlantis venture further than the Aquanauts did to find the lost city bearing the same name. The bright red submarine builds were complemented by neon green and yellow divers, while the creatures and structures of their foes held a mysterious and ancient monolithic vibe. It's almost as if the explorers have suddenly disturbed the creatures in their deep slumber. The main selling point of these sets was to collect all of the golden treasures, which sort of acted like keys to the lost city. Interestingly, one of their members was actually Brains from the Powerminers, who had been recruited by the Atlantis team after he completed his mission in the caves. There was actually a subtle nod to Aquazone with the body of an Aquanaut propped up against the gate of Atlantis, suggesting that the Aquazone team had probably failed their mission. The monsters of Atlantis were all quite unique and featured many different unique molds, from a hammerhead shark to a manta ray man and even squids. A couple special characters included the Golden King and the Portal Guardian, which both sported a pretty unique gold chestplate. Very rarely did a LEGO theme have its story completely fleshed out, but Atlantis was actually different. It had a whole short-length movie which featured a very abridged version of the story that the sets portrayed. It was yet another amazing title by LEGO that just didn't satisfy the demands of the company. Lasting only a year from 2009 to 2010, the theme was cancelled after 3 waves. Space Police was the spiritual successor to the previous 2 legacy themes under the same name. It followed a group of armored police equipped with handcuffs and the occasional blaster fending off and sabotaging the nefarious plans of the space aliens. Most of the theme was centered around crimes that you'd see in the real world, from carjacking to speeding, ATM fraud, chop shops, bombing a cafe. Wait, bombing a cafe? Yeah, that actually happened during one of the official LEGO trailers for Space Police. I don't think we'd be seeing something like that again in today's LEGO media, especially from a first-party source. The most memorable thing about Space Police was the stop-motion animations that were used to serve as hype or trailers for the new Space Police sets. It established the narrative and world building around the theme. LEGO did an amazing job with the staunch white police vehicles and their futuristic punk foes. The police minifigures weren't all that special, all uniformly gray with 2 different variations of helmets. But man, the aliens. They were obviously the star of the show. Wrench, Cranks, Frenzy, Slizer, the Skull Twins, and Brick Daddy are just a few to name. And yes, what you are in fact beholding is a glorified alien Lego pimp. The gold chain, purple fedora, and overall sleazy, scuffed-up appearance really sells it. His head is quite a unique mold too, and glows in the dark just like the Ghost minifigures. Overall, Space Police 3 wasn't at all like its predecessors. It was daring and strayed very far from its source material. A super innovative theme that made no attempt to be like the previous 2 generations. Somehow, LEGO again severed the theme before it could even have a 3rd wave. I'm not really sure why LEGO would prematurely cut out such a great theme like Space Police, but I can't really blame them as they were still shaking off the disaster that was 2003 when they strayed just a little too far off from the brick and practically plunged into bankruptcy. In the distant future, I await LEGO to reboot this theme once more. Only after I began writing my epiphany as to why I found that 2009 was such a great year for LEGO, something dawned upon me. The dreaded 3-wave strategy that LEGO had adopted, which killed off so many great themes. In retrospect, I think LEGO was trying to find the level of success Ninjago would achieve after its 2011 debut. I mean, think about it. They tried all of the previous themes only to cancel it after just 2 to 3 waves. LEGO had absolutely struck gold with Ninjago. It's one of the longest running original titles by LEGO that continue to have sets going into the next decade. It's so old now that an original title from my childhood is making memories of today's children, which in a way, it's an awesome sight to see, but it's also making me feel a bit sad, knowing that all of these other awesome themes that I much preferred as a kid to have lasted into the new era, especially Powerminers. That theme has so much potential to be a success today with the new molds we have now. But of course, like many before me, I realize that our childhood memories are clouded by nostalgia. It's very well possible that in a different world, if one of these other themes had struck the same kind of gold that LEGO found, I'd be sitting here having the exact same thoughts I do about Ninjago. Who knows though? I'm holding out hope that LEGO will reboot one of these legendary themes so that another era of children can enjoy them today.